Hello everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel of Chameli Devi Institute of Pharmacy, Indore. Now, in this presentation, we will continue with the part 2 of diuretics pharmacology. Loop diuretics, they are very powerful diuretics. They actually work by inhibiting the sodium potassium chloride co-transporter. This co-transporter is present in loop of Henle, specifically the ascending loop of Henle. And the working of this type of diuretics is to abolish the sodium chloride potassium reabsorption and thereby increasing the loss of sodium chloride and potassium into the nephron, and this results in the withdrawal of water from the nephron, and thus the urine volume gets increases up. So loop diuretics, they reduce the reabsorption of calcium and magnesium specifically. Basically they are used in edematous like condition due to heart failure, to decrease down the load on heart, and in liver disease, in kidney failure, and they also are used to treat the high blood pressure because of increase in the blood volume due to retention of sodium and water. Side effects include hyponatremia, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, means there is decreased level of sodium, calcium. Furosemide is a selective loop diuretic and it prevents reabsorption of salt. This allows the salt to instead pass into the urine, and furosemide is basically inhibit the sodium potassium chloride co-transporter, and it is used to treat the fluid retention in people with congestive heart failure. Very effective drug, furosemide. But in case of heart failure, to give the protective layer to heart, we usually use spironolactone as a diuretic agent in adjuvant therapy because of its potassium sparing nature. In furosemide, basically they are marketed under the name of Lasix for hypertension, 80 mg, and usually divided into 40 mg twice a day. Frequency gets double, and as the blood pressure falls under the potentiating effect of Lasix, means furosemide, further reduction in the dosage and even discontinuation may be necessary. So dose dependent manner may the effect can be seen. Then comes the osmotic diuretics. Osmotic diuretics have some ideal properties to be followed. They should be orally effective, they should be well absorbed, they should not be metabolized, they are freely filtered at glomeruli, and they do not get reabsorbed, and they behave as an inert member, and they should be inexpensive in nature. The drugs mainly used in osmotic diuretics are mannitol, glycerol, isosorbide. So first of all, we'll take the mannitol. Mannitols are not actions are not mediated by any kind of receptors or the target sites. They basically expands the extracellular fluid volume, and thus by increasing the glomerular filtration rate. Osmotic gradient in tubular lumen prevents its reabsorption, basically water reabsorption, and thus dilute urine takes place. Content of water gets increased up with the use of mannitol. However, it prevents the sodium reabsorption. It inhibits transport process in ascending loop of Henle, and it is classified as weak diuretic in some of the textbook, but that is why it is categorized in osmotic category, and it increases the volume of water. They are never used for chronic edema because for chronic edema we specifically rely on the potassium sparing diuretics or the loop diuretics, specifically furosemide. Preparations are here: mannitol intravenous 10% or 20%. Dose recommended is 1 to 2 grams per kg. Glycerol and isosorbide are available orally, and they have the dose range from 1 to 1.5 grams per kg. Uses of mannitol are in acute renal failure, just to maintain the glomerular filtration rate, and it is used to lower the intracranial pressure before the brain surgery and into the during the cerebral edema. It also helpful in lowering the intraocular tension in eyes, so they are used in case of acute glaucoma and sometimes in before the surgeries of eyes. They are used as a forced diuretic in drug poisoning, and they also counteract the low plasma osmolality after diet. Adverse effects associated with mannitol are acute intravascular volume expansion. They are contraindicated in edema, especially pulmonary edema and congestive heart failure related edema, intracranial hemorrhage. So care should be taken to take mannitol along with these type of comorbidities. Then it is also not recommended for the patients who have been undergone some kind of infection related to the injection at site, that is thrombophlebitis. So this is one of the major side effect of mannitol. Headache and nausea, they are non-serious type of side effects, and if overdose of mannitol occurs, dehydration progress to hypernatremia, increased level of sodium ions. Now the potassium sparing diuretics, very important classification. Major site of action of potassium sparing diuretics is the late distal convoluted tubule, or the start edge of the collecting duct. And potassium sparing diuretics, they act on the luminal membrane, amiloride and spironolactone. Spironolactone mineralocorticoid receptor targets the mineralocorticoid receptor and thus decreases or blocks the release of aldosterone, and this aldosterone is basically responsible for the retain of sodium and water inside the body and thus increases the edematous like condition. So spironolactone inhibit the release of aldosterone and thus excess of sodium and water does not get retained inside the body. Potassium sparing diuretic preparations available are aldosterone antagonist is spironolactone, basically 25 to 100 mg dose recommended oral route, and canrenone 8, that is available only IV, aplerinone 25 to 100 mg, and then triametrine 50 mg orally it can be used. Amiloride is also available orally as well as in aerosol preparation. Fixed dose combination with thiazide and furosemide available, but they are not advisable. The major action of spironolactone, they act on cortical segment of distal tubule, late distal collecting duct, and they are competitive antagonist of aldosterone as we have taught earlier, and they inhibit the sodium reabsorption. So the sodium ion concentration gets decreased inside the body. They causes the potassium retention. They spare the potassium, that is why they get the name potassium sparing diuretics. That is why more and more potassium ions gets retained inside the body and causes hyperkalemia like conditions. They are natriuretic in nature. They should not be used alone as diuretic, always used in adjuvant therapy, and they are useful when combined with thiazide and furosemide like diuretics. Pharmacokinetic profile says that they are given orally in microfine powder tablet. 75% of bioavailability has been reported, which is very good, and then it gets converted into its active metabolites canrenone, and this canrenoate is water soluble and can be given intravenously to get converted to canrenone. Onset of action is very slow because they act on steroid receptors and they are taking much time to show its action. Edema conditions, they are relieved from spironolactone use, so they are more useful in cirrhotic and nephrotic syndrome related edema. And apart from that, to counteract the potassium loss due to thiazide and furosemide, they have been a very good member who power the use of thiazide and furosemide. So people use spironolactone apart from these two categories because of its potassium sparing nature. Use in hypertension, usually combined with thiazides, and congestive heart failure related edema. The adjuvant therapy retards the disease progression and reduces the mortality rate. Randomized aldosterone evaluation study has been recommended with the use of spironolactone, and they are also used in primary hyperaldosteronism. Hyperkalemia is a major risk factor associated with spironolactone. In especially, it is found in chronic renal failure patients and patients taking ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers. This is related to the steroid structure, so gynecomastia or impotency in male is very common. Hirsutism, menstrual irregularities in females have been reported. Other side effects are drowsiness, abdominal upset, and it decreases the effect of spironolactone, and spironolactone may increase the digoxin levels in congestive heart failure. So this is a positive effect because digoxin is helpful in improving the inotropy of heart during the failure like conditions, and spironolactone, it if increases the digoxin level, then it will be beneficial for the patient. Amluride and trimeterine. Amluride and trimeterine, they have the direct action on distal tubule and collecting duct, and with these drugs should not be used alone. They are always categorized under adjuvant therapy, and they block the sodium ion channels. They have the weak diuretic action, and they indirectly inhibit the potassium secretion and also inhibit the hydrogen ion secretions. They are also available in oral as well as aerosol form for cystic fibrosis, and the basic areas include that they precaution are similar with spironolactone, but they does not cause the sexual dysfunction as spironolactone acts on the gene receptors, so they causes gynecomastia or sexual dysfunction in males, but it is not present or seen with amluride and trimeterine. Refractory edema and diuretic resistant causes include decreased access binding to the proteins, secondary hyperaldosteronism, and delayed absorption and nephron hypertrophy. Any one of these symptoms and causes can cause refractory edema or the resistance towards diuretic action of the drugs. So we can manage this type of condition with the use of salt restriction, complete bed rest, omission of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents frequency, metolazone, spironolactone, combination of diuretics like thiazide and furosemide. It should be stopped for a while to overcome the resistance of diuretics. Now the last summary portion of the diuretics includes, these are the sites where we can see easily how the different category of drugs act on. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors act on the proximal convoluted tubule. Loop diuretics target the ascending loop of Hanel. Then thiazide diuretics acts on the distal convoluted tubule, and potassium sparing on the late distal convoluted tubule and the start of the collecting duct. So that was all about the diuretic action. Now antidiuretic hormone is also important to consider here. Vasopressin basically is a non-peptide hormone antidiuretic in nature, completely works opposite to the diuretic action of the drugs. Arginine vasopressin, AVP, is a potent antidiuretic, another name of vasopressin basically, and it is formed in hypothalamus and released from the posterior pituitary gland, and the major function is to regulate the extracellular fluid volume. Also, it is vasoconstrictor in nature. Arginine vasopressin basically acts on two type of receptors, V1 receptor and V2 receptors. When it acts through V1 receptor, it increases the systemic vascular resistance and thus increases the atrial pressure. And when it acts through the V2 receptors, it increases directly the blood volume, retain the sodium and water concentration in the body, and thus increases the atrial pressure. The main use of vasopressin are for treating the excessive water loss caused by the diabetes insipidus. It is a disease where the excessive loss of water takes place from the body. So to combat that, we use antidiuretic hormone vasopressin. For treating the bleeding like conditions by esophageal varices is also treat with vasopressin. Side effects include headache, nausea, bronchoconstriction, abdominal cramps, and hyponatremia. Basically, these agents are contraindicated to the patients with coronary artery disease because they are vasoconstrictory in nature. So, care should be taken not to use them in the patient having arteriosclerosis or atherosclerosis like conditions. That is all with diuretic and antidiuretic portion. Thank you very much.